Every IT department has a moment they don't talk about, a moment that lives in the quiet spaces between tickets and status meetings. It is the story that we will call the Friday Night Patching Massacre. This is what happened. It all started some 7 weeks earlier when upper management and executive leadership teams at my company decided that patching was costing the company too much.
Inspired by actual events, portions of this story have been adapted, altered, or dramatized to protect privacy and enhance narrative clarity.
As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, it all started some 7 weeks earlier when upper management and executive leadership teams decided that patching was costing the company too much. So they set off on a crusade of business trips and conference calls to find someone that could do it cheaper and better than we were doing it. I worked in the Windows Server Tier 2 department, along with a few others. We initially were told no one would lose their jobs, that we would be able to focus on the real important alerts. Fast forward a couple weeks and one person per shift was let go. Figures. Leadership thinks that someone just runs Windows Update and reboots like their home laptops do. On Thursday, we received an email that read, "Good news. You will not be patching any servers this weekend. Do not help them and do not get involved." They got all the certs, all the training, and they are good to go. My co-workers and I just looked at each other. We knew what was going to happen. This weekend was our largest banking customer. The patching on the schedule was for their most important cluster set of servers. It was a 4-node Windows cluster that housed their car loan application. It is now Friday night, 9 p.m. The maintenance window starts. So far so good. We don't have any alerts from the monitoring tools, which tells us the folks doing it read our training documents and blacked out the servers for the duration of the maintenance window. It's just a few minutes now before the maintenance window ends. My co-workers and I all looked at each other with that look on our faces like we knew what was coming, but we weren't worried about it. We were told specifically, do not help them. Once the window was up, all hell broke loose. Severity 2 incident after another rolled in like a snowball rolling downhill. Multiple servers still showing down. Cluster resources failed. Unable to connect to the application. Multiple file share paths down. Quorum drive offline. It's bad, really bad. These alarms were for that one customer and their 4-node cluster. I linked all the tickets to a master ticket and informed our shift supervisor. He looks at the tickets. Then I show him the monitoring tool's output. He just looked at in silence for a moment, then said the infamous words, "Oh shit." He immediately took action. He raised it up to a severity 1 incident, started a bridge line and contacted the Tier 3 on-call engineer. Our team all sat back and just kind of laughed and shook our heads, kind of like, "Hey, I told you so." The time is now about 3:15 a.m. We still had 3 hours and some change left for our shift. The shift supervisor put the bridge call on speakerphone for our amusement. We hear him talking to the customer. The customer is mad. He asked, "What the hell were those patching dummies doing?" That tells me apparently that customer signed off on the patching outsourcing work. Then, the customer asks for me by name on the call. I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. I make my way over to the supervisor's desk and introduce myself. I had talked to this executive at this company several times in the past and in many patching email chains. He says, "Give it to me straight, what the hell did these idiots do?" I said, "Sir, based on the time the monitoring systems went into alarm, they rebooted all 4 cluster nodes at the exact same time." The customer screamed various obscenities, as you can imagine being upset, and it's after 3 a.m. Now the customer knows how in-depth our monitoring systems work. It will still go into alarm even if it's blacked out. All blacking out a system does is prevent it from creating a ticket in the ticketing system. At that point, the Tier 3 on-call had joined the call and was getting up to speed. I made my way back to my desk and was shaking my head. I listened to the call as the supervisor tells the Tier 3 engineer what happened and the initial diagnosis based on the monitoring system data. The Tier 3 engineer just says, "Ooh." You hear him typing on his keyboard for a moment, then he says, "Well, I have some good news. I can get to the remote in-band login screen, however the provided credentials do not work." "Do you have them?" The customer, still upset, can be heard yelling something in the background and slamming something in his house. He comes back on the call and says, "No, we had to let a disgruntled employee go earlier this week and we found they changed all the passwords to all remote in-band systems. We are pursuing legal action, but that isn't going to help us now." "No sir, it won't," our Tier 3 engineer said to the customer. "Who do you have in the data center tonight? Is Catherine working tonight?" "No," he said. "That's who we had to let go. Right now there is no one." At this point our Tier 3 already knows who is next on shift and they aren't in until 8 a.m. Tier 3 engineering said, "Sir, you'll have to drive into the data center or this will stay down until first shift arrives." You hear some more obscenities and hear some more things being slammed around at his house, like a fist on a desk. He can be heard saying, Help me understand again how we got here. I'm gonna raise so much hell with so-and-so on Monday. It's now approaching 4 a.m., and it's going to take the customer roughly 45 minutes to get to the data center. Our team kept on working, doing the tickets that came in. We looked at the change control and all 4 servers were on it, with the special instructions area left blank. Tier 3 didn't fill the special instructions out because it was a clone of last month's change control, with just the dates changed to this month. We heard the beep of the speaker phone as the customer joined the call. It's loud in the data center as the customer has roughly 60 servers. Customer did do a smart thing here. He called in the first shift engineer a few hours early and they are on the way. I heard Tier 3 give the customer the server names and asked him to hook a crash cart up to one. A crash cart is basically a cart with wheels that has a monitor, keyboard and mouse on it. The customer comes back and goes, "Guys, I can't find the server names." Tier 3 said, "I'm looking at a photo, it's right in front on the middle." The customer says, "I know that. I took the photos. All the labels for all of the servers are gone." The Tier 3 engineer then said, "Okay sir, the scope of your sabotage goes beyond just changing the remote in banned passwords. Give me a few moments and I will get you the exact serial numbers of each server and we'll locate them that way." It is now just shy of 5 a.m. The first shift data center operator for this customer has made it into the data center and is talking to the executive, and he is bringing them up to speed about how all the remote in banned passwords were changed and how the server name labels were removed from all the servers. "Oh boy," the data center operator said. "His name is Richard." Tier 3 relays the servers are in rack 4, about halfway up the rack. He relayed the range of serial numbers and emailed them to the executive and to Richard so they knew what to look for. They come back a few moments later and say, "Tier 3, there is no rack 4. The racks are labeled either after planets or star constellations." Tier 3 says, "Sir, I've added this to my list of sabotage. Start from the front, count back 4 rows and go see if the servers are there." The customer comes back and says, "Okay, we found them. They were actually in rack 5, so at some point the data center was expanded upon and documentation wasn't updated." Richard is making 4 labels for these servers and matching them with the serial numbers. "Okay, excellent," the Tier 3 engineer says. "Hook up the cart to the first one and let's see what is going on." "That's odd," Richard says. "It says no keyboard detected, press F1 to continue." Tier 3 shouts into the call, "Don't press anything. Read me the screen, does it say press F2 to go into setup or into the BIOS?" "Yes, F2 is to enter setup," Richard relays. "Okay, press F2. Tier 3 says they can't confirm yet but thinks the BIOS has been reset to factory defaults, which that means every server will hang on the no keyboard detected error. In the BIOS, the Tier 3 engineer guides Richard to the exact setting, and sure enough it says halt on, all errors. It was previously set to none. It was changed to none, but before they saved and exited, Tier 3 guided Richard to another area in the server's BIOS where it tells when the last time the BIOS was modified. Just last week the date's read. His suspicion is then realized. "We're probably going to have to do this to all 4 servers today, Richard. Just be advised." "No issues," Richard said, as he is familiar with this server model lineup. Tier 3 says, "Okay, far as my notes go, that's the only changes we have made. So we don't know exactly what happened if something was changed after it was reset to defaults, so what we want to do is reset it again to defaults. Let it reboot, then go change this exact setting, save and reboot again." "No problem," Richard says. "This will take approximately 15 minutes. "There we go," the Tier 3 engineer said on the call. "The first server is now online. Let me remote in and do a health check." About a minute had passed and then he says, "Everything looks good, all cluster resources online and all alarms for this specific server have cleared in our monitoring system." Excellent news, the customer can be heard shouting, whom then introduces himself as Bob. The Tier 3 engineer's name is Stephen and everyone exchanges pleasantries. Now to do this to the second server and rinse and repeat until we're finished. He then tells Bob, while Richard is hooking up the cart to the second server, "I wanted to let you know I will try to be on site on Monday to help you guys determine the scope of the sabotage and provide the police and FBI the information they need. Not right now, but in the back of your mind, I want you on the phone with the security company looking at all nighttime shifts last week so we can see if they took those labels off all those servers. I have reached out to our travel department on call to see what flights are available, etc. Also, I want you guys to go on change freeze lockdown until we get to the bottom of this." Bob says, "That sounds like a good idea and a great plan." Stephen says, "I see the loan application has processed its applications. All expired though." Expired means that various customers submitted finance applications online at dealer websites and they got financing through someone else. So far, potential loss of $4 million in loans. I have taken screen grabs of all this information and saved it. Richard and Stephen do the same process on servers 2, 3 and 4. They all came up without issue after the BIOS setting changes. The Tier 2 engineer shift was over some time ago and has went home. He won't be back in the office until Wednesday. Post-mortem incident update. Had the company not allowed patching to be outsourced, only one server would have been impacted because nothing else would have been touched until it was determined what was going on. The executive still would have had to drive into the data center, found the racks renamed to planets, and the server labels all removed. No monetary impacts would have happened because the other servers would have handled the load. Stephen arrived on site the following Tuesday. He worked with the police and FBI and also helped them locate a script on Catherine's laptop called Doom.ps1. That was a PowerShell script that she wrote that reset all the server BIOSes to default and changed the password to the remote in-band account. She posted the script as a task to run from another server because she knew she would be fired, and once she wasn't able to connect to that server and push out the script time execution. So when it ran, it went boom. Stephen made a similar script which modified the BIOS to set the halt on error to none, to mitigate the immediate issue. Over the next few months, the server BIOSes were all updated and a setting changed that allow remote BIOS update to disabled. This is how she was able to reset it to defaults because the servers allowed it. Stephen was on site roughly 2.5 weeks. He helped them get everything labeled correctly, the racks labeled correctly, matching serial numbers to the servers, updated photos, etc. The customer understood that any BIOS update would not be able to be done automatically through the patching system, and would need to be handled manually through the remote in-band connection, which Stephen was also able to run a script to change the passwords to newly created ones and tested. What was Catherine mad about? A $500 bonus she wasn't paid because the company said she took 1 hour of sick time over allocated. She had been there 4 years and all she ever got was a cost of living raise each year, and despite doing everything on the performance goals that she could do, was still given a meets expectations rating, never an above or exceeds category rating. This is what she was fired for, 1 hour over sick allocation. She had gotten very sick and had a doctor's note from the office and was on bed rest. What's going to happen to her now? Well, I'm not exactly sure. The executive on the call disagreed in how she was treated and demanded a full investigation to uncover everything with not just her, but other employees as well. Surely there is more to this story than just 1 hour over a sick allocation. It's time this company learns to appreciate their employees more, he said in a press release. The company also declined to press criminal charges against Catherine after she apologized to the company and the board, and outlined in great detail how she was treated the last few years. Names, dates, screenshots of instant messages, etc. The HR director was fired because Catherine went to HR several times, and each time it was just swept under the rug. Also, the data center manager and director above him were also fired for what the company called bad business practices. More on that in a bit. Catherine was also given her termination status changed to involuntary separation, which just means her and the company have separated and is eligible for unemployment benefits. The company also gave her 4 weeks severance for each year she had been employed, along with an apology to her as well for how she had been treated. She also received an undisclosed amount of money in the form of a settlement, with her agreeing to never pursue any further legal action against the company. Rumors quickly circulated that it was over $100,000, but neither party is allowed to disclose it. You see, every conversation in the command center is recorded and uploaded to a third-party vendor, and they keep 7 years of retention. There are cameras everywhere, with very good microphones. Once all her calls and things were uncovered, it went down exactly how she said it went down, even though HR and the data center executive said otherwise. This is partly why Stephen was on site for so long, as he was helping with the investigation. The investigation eventually reached back 2 years to Catherine, around the time a new executive data center director came on board. He repeatedly made unwanted advances toward her and directed inappropriate comments her way. She reported every incident to HR, but, as I mentioned earlier, nothing was ever done about it. Another manager had also been disciplined and ultimately fired for similar behavior on multiple occasions. Catherine made it clear she wanted nothing to do with any of it. The data center manager was ultimately removed from the company after a serious workplace misconduct case involving someone else that later resulted in formal charges. At least now you know why the title of this episode is called The Friday Night Patching Massacre, as it had way more story to it than just an outsourced patching team and a disgruntled employee. Thank you for watching.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. HR says it counts as employee engagement.